Would you like to learn about encryption key management? If so, this video is for you. In today's video, we're going to discuss managing encryption keys, also known as encryption key management. And encryption key management is the process of securely handling cryptographic keys for their entire life cycle. Now, I want you to remember that in organization, cryptographic keys are what's used to encrypt their data, to decrypt their data, to ensure messages are coming from where they're supposed to be, or what have you, or whatever is being encrypted. So if an organization loses its encryption keys, they may not have access to any of their data ever again. Now, if the encryption keys are stolen or compromised by a hacker, then unauthorized organizations can potentially decrypt the messages and do that organization harm. This could lead to a data breach, for example. It could lead to a regulatory or compliance failure. So none of that is any good. So the key here is we have a life cycle that we have to deal with keys and key management. And I want to whiteboard that life cycle out so you kind of understand what goes into it. The first part of any key management life cycle is really going to be generating the keys. So that's going to be the first time is we have to create the keys or generate the keys. So in this phase, we have to create strong, random, and unique keys. Now, if we use weak keys over here, then everything else is going to be bad. So the first phase is generating the keys. Now, depending upon the type of encryption we're using, at some point we have to generate we have to distribute the keys. Now, if it's symmetric cryptography, you have to, literally speaking, share the keys ahead of time, which makes life more challenging. If it's asymmetric, it makes life a lot simpler along the way, but we still have to distribute the keys. And that's because if we create the keys, unless we send the keys where they need to be, nothing would ever happen along the way. So once we distribute the keys to the places they need to be, we need to also make sure that we don't just put them out. Imagine you had a hardware key that was a Bitcoin wallet, for example, and it sat on your desk and somebody could just take it. So you need to store those keys, especially if you had the key to it on that Bitcoin wallet. You wouldn't want to do that. So you have to keep your keys stored. So we have to store these keys somewhere. And this, again, needs to be a very secure place. Now, we'll talk a little bit later about different options. There's hardware, there's software you can put this in, and depending upon your security needs, we'll typically change where you store your keys. But after we create them and we distribute them, we store them. Now, that's great. Guess what? We're going to use these keys too. So we'll use the keys for a period of time. Now, the thing is, if we're using the same key all the time and somebody figures out the key, we've got a problem. So the next thing we typically do in a key management life cycle is we typically rotate these keys along the way. And that way, we're not constantly having the same key. So part of any key management is also involving rotating the keys. And then at some point, we may not need to revoke keys. So let's say over here, we've got a user that's no longer part of our organization anymore. Or we have a user that's misbehaving. We want to take those keys away so they can no longer be used. And that's typically the life cycle that we have of key management. We generate our keys, we distribute the keys, we store them, we use them, we rotate them around, and then we revoke them. Now, where are we going to store our keys? Well, we have a few options in where we store our keys, and each option has their own strengths and weaknesses. One of the options ourselves is we can store it in a hardware security module. So this, when it comes to key storage, a hardware security module is typically going to be your most secure bet in most cases. Now, these are physical devices, they are tamper-resistant devices, and they're considered the most secure to generate, store, and manage your keys. And these isolate your cryptographic things away from other systems. So that's what's typically so great about that. Now, that's hardware, but there's also software-based systems that we can think about. There's key management systems. And these are typically software-based systems that centralize the management of the cryptographic keys. Software-based systems. So they give you like a management console and makes it real easy for you to handle key life cycles, enforce policies, and get some detailed audit logs. And all your cloud providers have their own flavor of they can manage your keys for you with one of their software-based key management systems. But if the cloud provider is hacked and your keys are sitting on that system and that also is hacked, that may not be your best option. But if you had it in an isolated hardware environment, it could protect you about that. Now, another way these things typically work is some organizations just let you bring your own key. And I'll explain what that is. And here, this enables customers to generate and manage their own encryption keys, say on-premise, and then they can securely transfer them to an on-cloud type service. And that way the customer has real control over their keys, even if it's in a cloud system, because they'll be generating by their on-premise systems, which is typically an environment that could be done. So let's summarize. Why do we have to manage keys? Well, it protects our data, because if the key was lost or a hacker got access to the key, our data would be lost, or it could be accessed. But if we also lose the keys, then we can't access it ourselves. It's critical for business continuity, because if the encryption keys are lost, any access to encrypted anything will be lost forever. So we need this for backup and recovery purposes. Well, what good is it to back up data if we lose the keys to restore the data? And it helps enforce compliance, because regulatory standards like GDPR, for example, or HIPAA do have privacy standards and mandate typical strict data security standards, including key management. And it tends to help mitigate insider threats, because if we've got strong key management policies and solutions, including segregation of duties and, say, access controls, it minimizes the risk of any malicious or accidental use of keys by, say, employees. So in this video, we talked about encryption key management and what goes into it in encryption key management life cycles. Now, if you desire to become a security architect, or an enterprise architect, or a cloud architect, or an artificial intelligence architect, we hold 2 free weekly webinars that are live on Zoom, where we'll talk about what we do as architects, talk about the skills you need to be an architect, talk about getting your first architect job. And you can ask me any questions you want on these free architecture webinars. You can register for these free architecture webinars by looking in the description of any of our videos and signing up. And I hope to see you on one of these free architecture webinars. Now, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, subscribe to our channel, hit the bell to be notified of new videos to assist you in your architecture career. And please send and share this video to someone to help build their architecture career. This is Mike Gibbs signing off for now, and I hope to see you on a free webinar or another YouTube video. Take care.